back to Road Gang Radio with Jimmy Mack, Lindsay Lawler.
Give me a minute, y'all. I'm coming.
And you, because if you're listening, you're in the gang. Take it away, founding member Phone Master Dre.
You are in the gang, and the gang is live from the House of Day God, a.k.a. Fastport Studios, with your host yet again, Jimmy Mack.
Big shout out to our friends from Fastport, by the way, who are basically finding ways to integrate our returning service members into the civilian life. You can go to fastport.com or nationalapprenticeship.org and find out all about them. Really excited, by the way, Dre. I've been tracking the I've been tracking the I can always forget what it's called. Not masks. What is it called that goes on the microphones? I can't remember the name.
Oh,
now.
yeah, the sleeves?
No, not sleeves. It'll come to me halfway through.
The label.
No, it's not the label, but yeah, the Radio Nemo Fastport microphone
cover.
It's coming.
Yeah, it's coming.
It's coming. The box, the box. You get the idea. I actually know these terms. I know that you call headsets cans. You get the idea. By the way, I was talking about the little photo roll that's going on over on the LinkedIn. If you're linked in over there, you'll be seeing some stuff that's actually happening and unfolding there. Lewie Pugh, who is OOIDA's Executive Vice President, can speak to this as well as he joins us this morning. Sent me a little link at Blaze Media. Dude, I'm telling you, man, everybody inside of trucking knew that there was a myth in regards to a driver shortage, but the problem was it was accepted everywhere else as kind of gospel. You'd literally have people I'd go to dinner parties, people like, I heard they're not going to have enough truck drivers in 2 minutes. And I'd be like, no, that's not what's really going on. And that narrative is suddenly collapsing in the mainstream media, isn't it? Hey, and good morning to you.
And yes, thankfully, after years and years and years of BS, the truth is coming out.
Well, brother, if you want to say the other word, by the way, the FCC is not lurking in our corner. I mean, it's bullshitsky, dude. I mean, this is really what it's kind of come down to here is the fact that, it's always been more and more people would talk about this and kind of push back on this in the industry. But that narrative has literally been picked up by almost everybody now. They're saying, like, we've been sold a bill of goods on this, which is how they got so many abusive practices through. Is that the case?
Yeah, I mean, that's 100% the case, and I'm glad people are starting to realize that was bullshit, and you're correct. I mean, for the last 40 years, we've been regulating and legislating from that narrative, and that's why we're where we are in highway safety, and all these people that shouldn't have CDLs, and all these people who can't speak English getting licenses, and why driver pay is low, why retention rates are terrible, overturns terrible, all these problems, the majority of these problems, that's where it comes from. I mean, even some of the safety technology they want to put on trucks, because we don't want to train truckers. We just want to put butts in seats and turn them loose, and then we'll get these little computer gadgets to help them, herd their truck down the road.
You bring up, this is a point that we haven't talked about, Lewie, that I think is just spectacular, is the fact that, look, nobody is against new technology or onboarding new technology. Some of it is, in fact, groovy, and the fact that a true professional truck driver can actually put that together, can pick and choose what they want to do, is terrific. But they should be the ones making the choice, and they should be the ones upgrading their training skills. Making this mandatory and forcing this upon people who don't need it is just one more way of turning trucking into a piggy bank or a protection racket for bigger players in the industry. How am I doing?
Yeah, you're 100% correct. I mean, any trucker, is going to want is safety technology that works. I mean, because every trucker wants to be safe. So, I mean, but it's got to work. And a lot of this stuff really isn't safety technology for the highway. It's more driver management tools. And again, because unfortunately some carriers have pretty low hiring standards. So, like I said, they want to put as much of this stuff on there so they can micromanage their drivers when they're out on the road.
I am kind of curious now about the USDOT crackdown on CDL mills, but included in that is the denial of the driver shortage. And, we've had them on our show. You've had them on your show. We've also had the NAPF TDS on our show as well, too. There really has to be some sort of coalition between players in the field and players who are in the training system to kind of really make sure that each one is preventing CDL mills from getting into this market? What is OOIDA doing? What are you guys doing to kind of make sure that the CDL training registry and that the CDL training in general, that the standards are raised? How do we stop the fly-by-nighters from sending people into the roadways as menaces?
Yeah, well, OOIDA's been going to continue to do what we've been doing forever. I mean, is continue to push for higher training standards. You know, if entry-level driver training really had some teeth in it, and we had some better training standards and mandatory hours behind the wheel, mandatory trainers sitting in the passenger seat, not sleeping in the bunk while the trainee's driving, all these little things, if we could get that stuff in there and then people audit and oversee this, and those people being FMCSA or DOT, of course, to make sure that these schools, we wouldn't have these problems. We wouldn't have these CDL mills. They wouldn't be able to operate. And unfortunately, some of these major accidents we've seen, if these practices had been in place, we wouldn't have had these accidents because these folks should have never gotten behind the wheel of a truck in the first place. That's what everybody misses in this. You know, it's not about putting them out of service on the side of the road or giving them tickets or whatever. What it comes down to is the people should never get to that level. They should never get handed a set of keys or a CDL license in the first place.
Yeah, and that in many ways is the firewall. That's the firewall that can actually be constructed here. That if we can actually put something together from a training perspective, and also that grand proposal from some of your members about the idea of making ELP dependent upon the CDL test itself, that prevents us from ever getting to the point where we don't want law enforcement agents having to make subjective determinations about whether or not somebody can speak English. I mean, not that it shouldn't happen from time to time, but if there's a way to kind of slow the pipeline down to prevent people from just jumping the fence, and I don't mean that in regards to borders, I mean that in regards to kind of, getting ahead of the scale by going to a 3-day training cycle, ending up with an organization that throws them out on the road along with throwing the keys at them. How do we do this, though? I mean, what is a way that we can make sure that the US DOT and the FMCSA really are able to effectively enforce and track down the bad players in the CDL mill cycle?
Well, it's kind of a twofold approach, but I mean, really what needs to happen is Congress needs to mandate or make some sort of a mandate that FMCSA or DOT has to follow, because then it's codified and it's a law. It'll take a lot more to get rid of it in the future. So, I mean, truckers need to be reaching out to their lawmakers, and I'm actually in D.C. as we speak this week, and I've been on the Hill talking about this with some, and some lawmakers are starting to hear this from their constituents, which is great, about training, and they're asking some questions. So, I can't say it enough. Call your lawmaker. Tell you how this stuff affects you, what you see out there on the road. I mean, if you're a victim of one of these schools, you should tell. If you're a victim of one of these schools and you know about the school, reach out to DOT. There's that National Consumer Complaint Database hotline. There's other ways you can get a hold of them. Get a hold of DOT. Let them know that these schools are where you were a victim of these schools. Because that's the only way we're going to fix this stuff is people have to speak up. And, I say this all the time. Washington moves slow, but the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
The other thing is that you bring up such a good point about victims, because that's one of the other ways that you guys have helped kind of make the charge here, and a number of our friends out there on the road have made the charge. We need to, except where there is genuine malfeasance, drunk driving, genuine evil going on behind the wheel, to remember that many of these people are as much of a victim as those whose rates are being driven down, that they often are the result of borderline slave labor, being basically captive to the people that they work for. And it's so important that these people speak out, because the other domino in this thing, and I don't know how this gets out there, this is a moment for the safety people, the safety coalitions to get involved in saying, to go out there and use their power and their megaphones to say, do you feel comfortable driving your kids to soccer practice knowing there's some guy behind the wheel who not only is not proficient in English, but more importantly, has undergone only 5 days of truck driving training and is out there on the road driving around you? How do we get the Safety Coalition people to use their influence to explain to the general public that these people are out there?
Well, that's a good question. I understand where the safety people are coming from. I understand, a lot of these folks have lost somebody's life and they have, a certain issue that they're wanting to push forward because they think it'll help from saving someone else's life, like their child or partner or whoever. And I understand that. But most of these folks don't know trucking or really understand the trucking business. And that's what gets frustrating when we try to work with these folks and talk to these folks and explain there may be better ways of skinning this cat than the way that they're going. Things that could make a much greater difference on safety and would have the same effect, probably a much larger effect. But a lot of times there's folks they're focused on that one issue, and you just can't get them to come off of that issue. And it's frustrating to me because the safety folks and truckers really have a lot in common. Nobody wants to hurt anybody. Nobody wants to kill anybody. Truckers want to, there's no one on the highway who cares more about safety than American truckers because that's where we live. That's where we work. That's our office space. Our families are out there too, and there isn't a trucker out there who hasn't seen bad catastrophes and everything else on the road and know the effects of when safety gets forgotten or goes sideways. So, again, those folks, if they're listening to this, reach out. We could work together to make our whole industry better if we all speak from one voice. And that's what hurts trucking a lot of times is we're too fragmented. We're too fragmented sometimes as an industry. We're too fragmented with the people on highway safety. It's just you get these people here, this people here, this people here, and the more we speak from the same hymnal, the faster we'll get it done.
Yeah, and I love the idea of that same hymnal because, like I said, I think this is a moment for them to really, they could have a real moment here because if they, given the fact of what the training sector, the legitimate training sector, the CVTA, and of course our friends at NAPF TDS, and you guys are talking about, there's a real movement among a lot of people to really hold everybody accountable for what is being put out there on the road. And if they, in fact, become part of this coalition, we're talking about something incredibly powerful because, and you can explain this to our listeners, by the way, Lewie. The reason we build coalitions is we really do want a congressman or a senator's staff sick of hearing about the same issue from different people. It becomes harder to close the door. Nothing's worse than when you sit down with somebody and end up here. Well, in regards to it's great for us. But when you sit down with somebody and it's like, this thing again? This is I didn't expect this to be in here, right? I mean, you want to create pressure points in every direction, right?
Yeah, 100%, and especially in today's world of politics, because unfortunately we don't have a lot of lawmakers that really want to stick their neck out there. They talk a good game, but when it comes to really where the rubber meets the road, they don't really want to put their neck out there and take a chance of irritating part of their base. Two things work in Washington, and that's money and grassroots. Unfortunately, grassroots still works, but that's where we can all come in. And if you're right, if we all speak from one hymnal or one way, it's really easy because the first thing a lawmaker asks when you tell them about something or their staff, well, who's going to be against this? Who would oppose this? What kind of opposition do you have on this? They always want to know that stuff because, they got to get reelected every couple of years if they're in the House or every 6 years if they're in the Senate. And they're always looking for that next reelection. And so, and this is today's climate of politics. It's probably always been that way to a point, but it seems to be much worse now. Nobody, I said this yesterday to the guys. We've got some lawmakers that one of these days are going to have to make some really hard decisions or this is never going to get better. And that's been the problem. Training is very expensive, but it should be. Nobody's complaining about the cost of being an electrician or the cost of being a plumber or the cost of any other kind of blue-collar trade school jobs. But we're always worried about trucking for some. We got to rush people through and the cost. A good education is going to be expensive, and I get that. Paying truckers properly, it's going to be expensive. It's not going to be easy. But truckers have been paying for lost time and all these things for years. Now we're all paying for it on the highways. And then finally, parking. There's nothing sexy about parking, but we need parking, and it's hard to. And people don't want trucks parked in their neighborhood. They want their goods, but they don't want trucks. We can't have it both ways. And, that's what the sentiment I've been trying to say on the Hill as of late. If you really, really want to fix highway safety, there's 3 things that we need to start focusing on, and that's training truckers, paying truckers, and making sure that they have a safe place to rest. And if we would put our efforts, the folks on Capitol Hill and DOT, into those 3 baskets, most of these problems that we talk about will fix themselves almost overnight, and safety numbers will start going the right direction.
And by the way, here's another thing, Lewie, too, and this is something I believe, and I've been saying, that if you train someone to be a truck driver properly, he or she will actually know their worth and know when they're getting screwed. Oh, wait, did I just articulate what might be the problem? That if you actually train somebody for everything that they need to know as best you can before you put them out there, they will actually understand their value, because they won't be picking up bits and pieces if they get lucky and hang around in the industry. That's a big thing, too. Proper training also lets the driver know exactly what he or she is worth. We got a quick comment from Michael here. Very quick comment from Michael before we get back to talking to Executive Vice President of OOIDA, Lewie Pugh. Michael, fire away.
Good morning, guys. All right, I'm here to say that, Lewie, you're absolutely correct. They're more inclined to worry about getting reelected and doing the right thing for truckers. It all boils down to the pay, like you said, and that one big trucking organization that started all of this, it boils back down to them. They try to bring in foreign drivers to cut the rates and cut the pay and work drivers for nothing. Now, this is the backdrop of it. A lot of things have to be changed, and I want that training up. I want FMCSA and our people in Washington to do a better job, because we are getting messed over, and to get rid of some of these brokers.
Thank you very much, Michael. Well said. We turn back to Lewie, who just got a chance, by the way, to spend some time over in Orlando. Tell us about that real quick before we pivot to other things that are on your mind. How was Orlando, Lewie?
It was wet because it was raining, but but no, it was good. I was asked to come speak at the Broker Carrier Summit in Orlando to talk about issues and problems that carriers face, and their wants, their needs, their desires, their frustrations, whatever, from brokers. And honestly, it was well received. In fact, I even brought up the 300-pound gorilla in the room there while I was there, broker transparency. And, of course, trucking and brokers kind of see differently on that, but kind of explained where we come from on that. But it was a good time. Folks were very attentive and very interested. Brokers are a necessity a lot of times for folks out there, and there are good ones. There's a lot of bad ones, unfortunately, but, there's bad folks on both sides, unfortunately, that kind of mess it up for everybody. But, we catch flack sometimes for going to these events and told we're in bed with brokers and support the brokers. And, the sad thing is, that's not true at all. We're for truckers, but the only way problems get fixed is if people can sit down at a table or at an event or a conference or whatever and have an adult conversation. And sometimes things get said that you don't like or you don't completely agree with, but everybody has a reason. And the more that you can do these kind of things and explain your side and they can explain, we can hopefully find some solid ground and places where we can all work together to make our industry better. Because, that it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. That's the problem in trucking is we've got too many little silos of people all over the place, and we're too fragmented. And the more we can all get together, we can move mountains.
You know, and we could have a whole history conversation about deregulation at the end of the 70s and the beginning of the 80s. By the way, that was a bipartisan thing. There is no one individual to blame for what went on there. But all of those conversations, one of the things that people are realizing that maybe one of the ways to kind of make that happy middle happen, not to overregulate the industry, but at the same time bring some order, is to figure out getting everybody on the same page and to allow the FMCSA and the DOT to serve as umpires, calling balls and strikes and calling them consistently and fairly, that the rules don't just apply to the men and women driving. They apply to shippers, receivers, brokers, and everybody else, CDL training schools, everybody else in the industry. If I understand you correctly, you're saying we're not asking you to change too many rules here, although we'd like some more parking and there's some transparency stuff. We're asking everybody be held accountable and responsible at the level the truck drivers are, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we got plenty of regulations now, and pretty much we have regulations to cover most of these problems. The problem is how they're being enforced or being looked at. I mean, we need to tweak a few things, but that's what really enforcement stuff comes down to, a lot of this.
Let me ask you too. By the way, do you have any expectations of the incoming? Well, he's already there, but of what we can expect to see from Mr. Bars? By the way, how's he doing? I know he just got started, but what are your expectations of him? What do you think we'll see?
I think we have an administrator who doesn't completely understand trucking, but has the best understanding of trucking that we've probably ever had. And the only reason I say he doesn't completely because he never drove a truck. But I know Mr. Bars personally, worked with him at CVSA and other places. He's a genuine person. He's a good person. He wants to make the industry better. As he has said to me, and I agree 100%, we're always not going to agree, not always going to be able to agree, but we can at least sit down at the table and try to work it out. And that's the way it's going to be. But he is very, very much interested in highway safety. He, as being an enforcement officer, understands what happens when we don't have good safety. I mean, he has already asked me in the past, what do I think we need to do to make the roads safer? And I've said the same thing I've told you. And I'm getting ready here in about 5 more hours to go have our first official meeting with Administrator Bars. Looking forward to that. We're going to talk about some of this same stuff. We're going to talk about some training issues out here. We're going to talk about the non-dom CDLs, the English language proficiency, the NCCDB, broker transparency. We're going to bring a lot of these things up that are affecting drivers along with some other stuff. But it'll be good to see him, be a good visit. But I do think he, when he first got mentioned, he kind of got some folks in trucking gave him a bad way, and I don't think that's right. Like I said, Derek's just a good, solid person, and I think he's going to try to do everything he can and is able to do. But we have to remember they can only do so much here. Some of this they have to get their orders from Capitol Hill. They're not in charge of everything that sometimes we think they should be in charge of, like shippers, receivers, and stuff. So, but we're really seeing, DOT's been really good so far this year of listening to truckers and addressing the problem, Secretary Duffy and stuff, and I think that will just continue to go that way, and it trickles down from Duffy down. So
yeah, and by the way, it's like one of those things too, where that he in many ways is simply the ability of Secretary Duffy to be able to have his policy coherently executed. That's what the executive branch is about anyway. Is that they have a policy in place now, and it is not like Bars is going to come in and reverse anything Duffy has done. It's going to be a matter of taking Duffy's ideas and strategizing ways for them to kind of get executed at the level that he was. Our good friend Tom Bray, by the way, says, my contention has always been there's a shortage of qualified drivers, and lowering the intake standards does not solve that. Thank you for your comment, Tom. Always good to see you out there making that argument. Lewie, what else is coming up should we be looking for? I mean, I know that I hate to bring up parking again, but and we've seen some really big things going on at state DOTs. Is there any more movement on parking once we get out of this government shutdown, which I have a feeling after Tuesday might come to a really quick end? What are you hearing?
Yes, parking. I mean, there's been some talk about that. I had a meeting with myself and Doug Morris, with the governor of Maryland. He's interested in parking, and so we hear from a lot of state DOTs. They really want parking. It's bipartisan here on the Hill. We just got to get a bill in the Senate side. So, be reaching out to your senators about this as well, and your congressmen, to get them on the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act. I mean, we've had this on the House floor the last two Congresses. There's no reason why I don't see it's not going to get into the highway bill. This whole government shutdown, we thought we were going to kind of see the beginnings of that before the end of the year. It doesn't necessarily look like that's probably going to come true now due to the shutdown, and everybody's missed over a month of work. So maybe the first part of next year, but I do believe it's going to be in there. Nobody talks against it, so it's like if Congress could just get their heads out of their butt long enough to work together to do something for trucking, they could get this passed really, really easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it almost feels like it almost feels like it's a zombie idea of why haven't we passed this yet? I'm really not sure why we haven't passed this yet, and everybody keeps asking everybody else why we haven't passed it. At some point, why don't they all just sit down and pass it, right? By the way, Lewie, I always leave a little bit of time for this. You guys are taking on Purdue this Saturday. It's going to be pretty easy, isn't it?
Well, one would like to hope. You never know. When you're number one, everybody's gunning for you. And of course, when you're Ohio State, it feels like you're getting gunned for all the time. So sometimes not so good teams can really get motivated, and really good teams can sometimes take things too lightly. So you never know. It's never over till it's over, but it should be easy. I mean, I feel like we should win the season out, and our first big test. I thought our big test was going to be last weekend against Penn State at the beginning of the season. I mean, I thought the Texas game and the Penn State game were going to be the two critical games, and we saw what happened to Penn State. So I guess the way I look at it, our next big game that I'm really a little concerned is Indiana, probably in the Big Ten championship, because that looks like where this is heading.
Yeah, and it looks like Cignetti fixed the problems that he had last year. I don't mean that he had problems last year. To go 11-1 in your first season is kind of remarkable. But there was a lot of issues that he knew he had to kind of shore up, and it seems from the way things are going on their side of the ball, they've done that. That's going to be a really great game. I'm looking forward to that. Always love talking to you, brother. I haven't seen you in a long time. We got to make up for that. Thank you, Lewie. It's great talking to you, man.
Hey, you're welcome. And one other quick thing. This is for Rod Nofstiger and George O'Connor at OOIDA. Notre Dame's now the second best football team in Indiana, because Indiana University is the first. So I like that.
Well, what's funny about that is I give them a little bit of a hard time for that as well, too. But remember this, that the Irish have bragging rights until those folks go to South Bend and manage to win a game over there. But it's nice that they're higher ranked. Yeah. That's a big deal. Thank you, Lewie Pugh. You're the best, dude.